FAIRtax is coming, don't stand in the way. FAIRtax is coming across the USA. FAIRtax is coming to clean up this mess. We got to get rid of the IRS. Hey, hey! Hey, hey!
Hello and welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Molero.
And we are
the FAIRtax Guys.
And I am laughing up my sleeve.
Yeah.
Little bit of explanation is in order. We are recording this on Wednesday, April the 18th. We're getting a couple of weeks ahead on our recording session, but usually April 15th is the tax deadline. That fell on a non-business day.
Yep.
So, and then the next business day for the rest of the country was a holiday in D.C., which would be Monday the 16th.
Yeah, but just in D.C.
Yeah, so the deadline was supposed to be yesterday, April 17th, but guess what? It was extended until today because the crush on the IRS computers overwhelmed them and they crashed.
Yeah. So all the people that are filing online, like I did a few weeks ago, they're all waiting till the last minute, and those antique IRS computers just couldn't keep up with it.
Yeah, but what does that tell you about the system? When people are waiting until the very last instant to have to deal with it. That's kind of a rotten system, don't you think?
I get the idea that people don't really like the income tax, you know?
Yeah, I do. Well, you said you were talking to somebody today who was mad because they didn't realize there was going to be an extra day and they filed yesterday, and if they'd have known that, they'd have waited until today. Exactly.
Yeah, she was mad because she owed money, and she would have had an extra day, so she was upset about that. Oh well,
there has got to be a better way to do this, don't you? I bet you sure a lot of people by the time this episode airs is what I meant. It's going to be a couple of weeks beyond the deadline, but I bet you there's still people out there that are still muttering under their breath and wondering why are we putting up with this, this awful income tax system every year.
At the meeting that I was at just before I came to your studio here, they're talking about filing for an extension. So people are already, so they know, first off, it's due January 1st, but, so we got to April 15th, and then 16th, then 17th, then 18th, and they still are talking about filing for an extension.
But the thing a lot of people don't understand, filing for an extension just extends the deadline by which you have to submit your return. It does not extend the date at which your money is due. So if you get an extension and you file in June and you end up owing money, then they're going to get you for interest and penalties for the part that was between April 15th or at least 18th or whatever.
That's true.
You do not get an extension for actually getting your money into the government's hands. You get an extension for telling them everything they need to know in order to decide if they want to take more from you or if you overpaid and you get some back.
And I'll remind you too that for individuals, it's April 15th, or in this year, the 18th. But for corporations, it's March 15th. Their deadline is March 15th.
Oh, mercy.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get too deep in the weeds here, let me give everyone our email address again, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. And our Facebook page, invite you to like us and keep an eye out for our next Facebook Live.
Yeah,
I tell you what, it was good to see. It really was. Alan Waters attended. Now, you might not know who that is. He is running for Senate in Massachusetts against Elizabeth Warren. And it's really nice to see someone who is running for that high in office aware of the fair tax and listening to us.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
I also invited Neil Bortz to join us. I'm not sure if he did, but come to find out, he had a Facebook Live immediately after ours.
Yeah, he was on a couple of minutes before we wrapped ours up, so I kind of doubt that he had a chance to look at us. But, Randy Fisher is after Neil Bortz a lot, so hopefully he will. I would love to be able to talk to him, even if it's just on the phone.
Oh, it's great. Just to go back a little bit in history, Bob and I both learned about the fair tax because of Neil Bortz, because of when he was on the radio. Now, he's been off the radio for 5 years, but prior to that, he had a daily radio show, and one of his issues was the fair tax. And then he and John Linder, who was a congressman at the time, wrote the book that was published in 2005, the fair tax book. And because Bortz was talking about this, and what I heard, the snippets that I heard on his radio show, sounded pretty good. So I got the book, and And Bob did the same thing, and that's how we learned about the FAIRtax. And, it sounded like, this is really a good idea. This is really a good idea. It's so simple. Why are we beating our heads against the wall with the current income tax when we have this wonderful solution to get rid of it? And the thing with the IRS computers yesterday just kind of emphasizes all that, doesn't it?
Oh, it sure does. I'll tell you what, I hope if we do get to talk to Bortz, maybe he won't be complaining about the guy who was standing up in front of him in a concert. That was he was really going off on this guy on his Facebook Live here a couple of days ago. Another quick little loose end here I want to tie up before we get digging in too deep, and that is our watch on Congress.gov.
Yeah.
We are keeping a look at Congress.gov. Now, you can do this if you like to, but we're doing it for you. You can go to Congress.gov. There's a little search function there, and if you search on the string Internal Revenue Code, put those 3 words in quotes, and hit the search function there, you will get back all of the legislation that, what that's a hit on. And we have found out, as of yesterday, 2 more changes to the tax code were introduced yesterday.
Oh, boy.
One by Representative Velasquez of New Mexico, H.R. 5543, to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to allow for a credit against tax for certain flood insurance expenses. So now we're talking about municipal solid waste. We're talking about flood insurance. And also H.R. 5536, which was Representative McEachin of Virginia, to amend the code to expand the credit for expenditures to provide access to disabled individuals. Just fine and noble goals, but really, is the tax code the right place to do that?
If you did a quick survey of all these proposals, you would find out that our income tax code, it kind of inserts itself into every aspect of American life. The income tax is supposed to raise revenue for the federal government. So why do we have language in there about municipal solid waste?
Because somebody's getting a tax break for messing with that, and the lobbyist put that in there. Yeah. That's exactly why that happens.
Health care, just about anything, the Olympic medals that we've talked about, just about anything having to do with life in America is somehow wrapped up with the tax code.
Yeah, I'll have to find out from Brittany how much the IRS wanted to nail her for that bronze medal she got.
Oh, jeez.
Anyhow, I say we've been bashing on the IRS and the income tax for a good little while here on FAIRtax Power Radio. But last episode, if you haven't listened to it, you really need to go back and do it. We're trying to get away from the negative campaigning a bit and just focus for the next episode or so on the good points of the fair tax.
Yep.
And of course, to review real quick, the best point of the fair tax, at least this time of year, no more tax returns. You do not have to spend hours on end either online with a computer or the old-fashioned way with a pencil and paper, filling out forms and sending them into the government, telling them all about your finances and hoping that you get some of your money back.
Yeah, and the record keeping that goes on for the whole 12 months prior to in the prior year, you don't have to worry about that. Now, if you want to do record keeping for your own personal reasons, fine, that's up to you. But for taxation, it's all gone. You don't have to worry about that record keeping for an individual. Because for individuals, there will be no more tax return when we go to the fair tax. The fair tax is a consumption tax. When you go to the store to buy something, it'll be included on the receipt, in the price of the product. You pay it just like you do in 45 of the 50 states right now. And every time you buy gasoline, probably gasoline is the best example.
Yeah, they get you in all 50 states for that.
Yeah, absolutely, because there's a federal excise tax in there. And so it's that simple. You buy gas, you pay for it, you're done. And with the fair tax, you go to the store, you buy a coffee maker, you pay for it, you're done. And that includes paying your federal taxes.
Yeah, and the parallel with the gasoline taxes is those taxes are embedded in the price already. So if the thing says, $2.50 a gallon, you pump 10 gallons, you pay $25. Nothing's added on after the fact. And with the fair tax, you hear some people saying, 23% sales tax, that scares them to death because they think a $100 item on the shelf is going to turn into a $123 item at the cash register. Not so. The fair tax is like the gas taxes. It's included in the price, but unlike the gas taxes, you see them on your receipt so you know how much you're paying.
Yeah, that's right. And they're that's in the bill to have the fair tax listed on the receipt for everything you buy so that people are more aware of what they're paying. Whether you're just buying one item at the store or you're buying a new car, for the family or something, or a home. They want you to see the level of taxation, so it's kind of in your mind every time you go to the store or write a check, for a service rendered.
So the income tax returns go away.
Yeah.
Federal withholding from your paycheck, your IRA distribution, your Social Security, or anything else, federal withholding disappears.
Yep.
The federal payroll taxes disappear. Those are the most regressive taxes in the world, because that's just the Social Security and Medicare taxes are paid only by people working for a paycheck. Mm-hmm. So if we want to keep those programs on a firm financial footing, we expand the tax base from just those people to everybody who buys things. So your tax returns go away, your withholding goes away, your payroll taxes go away, and you get the prebate, which is a tax refund every month, and that's guaranteed.
So whatever the price of things goes up, and it's predicted that the stuff is going to go up about, between 10 and 13%, you're going to more than make up for it by having more cash on hand for just the reasons that Bob just stated. All right. You're going to have more money, more cash available because of the prebate and because of getting your entire paycheck and so forth.
So I don't know anybody of any political affiliation or a political party that would choose to have, I'd rather have a smaller paycheck every week, and I'd like to fill out this long, complicated tax return every year. I'd rather do that.
Yeah.
So there's probably some weirdo somewhere that would do that. There's always one in every crowd. So I will not sit here and claim that 100% of the people would choose the larger paycheck and the no tax return, but I will bet at least 99.997% of the folks would do that.
Yeah.
And if you want it that way, very simple. Get on board, support the fair tax, tell your local representative, tell your senators that you want the fair tax, and you're not going to vote for them if they don't support it. And with the midterms coming up, that should work.
Yeah, that's right. That's very important. You've got every member of the House, the U.S. House, is up for election, and 1/3 of the Senate. So it's time to get on these folks and get after them. I noticed we haven't heard from Rob Woodall lately, but yesterday, lo and behold, there was a video that he put out talking about, we did this, he still called it reform, this tax reform in December, but now we have to go all the way with the fair tax, and he was extolling the virtues of the fair tax. So that was good to see again. And it also indicated to me that he's running for re-election.
I hope so. Okay, so we've hit on the direct benefit to the fair tax. No tax returns, you get your full amount of your paycheck, you get your prebate everywhere. But there's a lot of things that the fair tax does that is kind of indirect to people. And, of course, the biggest thing is we say it's rocket fuel for the economy. Mm-hmm. You talk about the best jobs bill that Congress could ever possibly pass, the fair tax would be it. Because you see all these international corporations, when they see that there is no income tax to deal with, even if they just pass the cost of it on to consumers, which they all do. But if there's no income tax to deal with, it's a lot less complicated to do business in the United States than anywhere else. They're going to come here. And when they come here, jobs, jobs, jobs. You're going to have to be hiding under a rock to avoid getting a job with a fair tax.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Now, we spent the whole last episode going through quite a list of advantages of the fair tax, and we didn't finish them. We didn't exhaust them all.
Yeah, I like the one about the fourth one up from the bottom of the list. Congress cannot alter. Let's see. Oh, that's printed wrong. Cannot alter the. There we go. Congress cannot alter the tax to reward friends and punish enemies. Do you think our Congress critters would actually do that?
Oh, pray tell.
Reward friends and punish enemies? Are you kidding?
They wouldn't do that.
I got some oceanfront property in Kansas City you can have if you believe that.
Jeez. So, that's a terrible problem. And Steve Hayes calls it congressional tinkering. Congress is always tinkering, all right? And yes, they do play favorites with it. There's no question. But a lot of it is done because of the lobbyists. The lobbyists come in and say, Mr. Congressman, I need you to support this proposal here. We need to change the tax code in this way. And, by the way, there'll be a nice contribution to your campaign fund. And remember, the campaign fund, when these folks retire from Congress, whatever's in that campaign fund, that's theirs. Okay?
Yeah, they get to
so
keep
they're
that.
Always trying to pad that campaign fund. And we, the people, just get a more, complicated tax code almost every day. Bob just read some of the proposals that were made in just the last few days, and there was a total of how many?
There's now 1,292 hits if you did that Internal Revenue Code search at congress.gov.
Yeah, so for the 115th Congress, here we are, 1 year and 4 months into, not quite 4 months, into the 115th Congress, and they have just shy of 1,300 proposals to change the tax code. Now, fortunately, very few of those will actually become law, but some of them will. And
so we saw a statistic on our last Facebook Live that, was it Kerry Bowers, I think, that supplied this to us, said of the 3,000 proposals, 400 got through.
Yeah, that sounds
which is
like
not
that.
a huge, ratio, but it's still, if you look at the absolute number, 400 changes to the tax code. That's more than one per day.
And then
that's what gets through. That's just not what's proposed. That's what gets through.
Yeah, and what's worse than that is that the IRS themselves will make up certain rules. And they'll want, somebody to, for instance, did the Congress really say that if you took, I can't think of the mortgage. If you did a short sale on your house, you were upside down on your house, you couldn't sell it, you had to do a short sale, and according to the IRS rules, that the amount of the mortgage that was relieved is taxable income. Did Congress really do that? Or is that just one of those rules the IRS made up on their own? Because they do that.
That's one of those rules the IRS made up on their own.
Yeah. So, not only does Congress entertain a lot of these bills, but the bureaucracy itself creates a whole bunch of statutes or regulations that have the force of law. That mean you have to comply with them or you get in trouble with the law. So between Congress and the bureaucracy, it's just a maze of stuff that comes at us every year.
There is simply no room for the bureaucracy to be writing regulations with a fair tax.
Yeah, that's right.
You pay it at the cash register when you buy something. New goods and services, used goods are exempted. We've mentioned that before, and that's it. What kind of regulations can you add into that? You really don't.
Yeah, and if you want to see how simple it is, just try to do a search in your if you live in a state that has a state sales tax, try to find problems with the state sales tax. All right, people who are defrauding it or something. I mean, does the state sales tax organization show up on a homeowner's door saying you didn't pay tax on that pair of jeans you bought last week? No, that doesn't happen.
No.
If there's a problem, it's with the vendor. They go after the vendor. They don't go after the individual.
But I remember the feedback we got on our Facebook Live, someone saying that they fear the state collection agency much more than the IRS because these states have got it down. They know how to ferret out what little bit of fraud there might possibly be with the sales tax, and there's not much. Only others would be if a particular vendor or a particular retailer is collecting the tax from the consumer and not remitting it to the state, which is not the consumer's problem.
Yeah, that's right.
The state will nail you for that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They will come after you, and they've been doing it for a while, so they know how to do that. They know what to look for.
All right.
So.
Let me go off here in a slightly different direction. Another volunteer here in Florida, Paul Livingston, brought to our attention a letter that a pastor somewhere had written talking about the tax system on a humanitarian, humane kinds of grounds. And he was making a lot of points. We've heard these points before about how cruel it is to cut taxes on corporations and the wealthy and, the social programs that we need. So it's cruel and unusual to be cutting these taxes. And we say, if you really want to look at this from the humanitarian angle, we'll try to leave the religious end off of it because that's not our bailiwick here. Mm-hmm. But if you want to look at it truly from which is the most humane tax system you could possibly get, the fair tax wins that. Because if you only had 1 point to go on that would be because it gets rid of those highly regressive payroll taxes.
Yeah.
You want to be humane to people that need help, completely untax them. I mean, even the ones that don't pay any income tax, still the working poor have to pay those federal payroll taxes.
Right.
And that's no good. So the fair tax wins on that. It is much more humane. And as we said before, the current income tax system has the government is your highest spending priority. Pay Uncle Sam before you provide for your family. The fair tax fixes that, flips it back to the family first, government second. I defy anyone to tell me of a more humane system than that.
No, that's absolutely right. Bob is absolutely right. Yeah, the fair tax really protects the people who most need protecting. And we've talked about this plenty of times. We talked about it in the last episode. All right, those folks that are just getting by, and we have the prebate schedule and so forth. Like we said, they get the prebate. They get their entire paycheck. All right, and yes, the costs of things will go up a little bit, but they're going to have more, more
have
cash.
a lot more money in your pocket. Your purchasing power will go up.
Yeah, that's right. Their purchasing power will increase. So Bob is absolutely right. The fair tax is far and away a much more humane system. It puts your family ahead of the government just by getting rid of the withholding. Think about that. You get your entire paycheck, so you get to take your paycheck home and take care of your family. And then when you buy stuff, whatever you choose to buy, then you'll be taking care of the government. And instead of 140 million taxpayers, we're going to have 320 million taxpayers because everybody goes to the store, except for maybe the infants.
Okay. But you're talking about the prebate schedule. Let's toss out a couple of numbers. I know numbers in radio don't always mix real well. But on the lowest end of the scale, a single-person household, one adult, would get a prebate if fair tax were the law of the land today. They would get a prebate of $233 a month.
Yeah.
If you double that to a two-adult household with no dependents, that's $465. Add in two dependents for a two-adult household, and it's $631 a month. And a friend of mine has 4 kids. So 2 adults and 4 kids, they would get $797 a month in prebate. Now, you talk about something that people would like. I don't see anybody that wouldn't like that.
Yeah, and that is not an entitlement. What that is that reimburses them in advance for the fair tax they'll be paying on the basic necessities, okay? Food, clothing, shelter, and so forth, all right? Yes, the fair tax will be assessed on everything you purchase, all new products and all services. So everybody will pay the fair tax, but everybody will get the prebate. And those that are living right at the poverty level, they're going to be reimbursed one for one with the taxes, the fair tax they'll pay on the basic necessities. So they will pay for it when they go to the store or write a check to the plumber, but they're going to get it back. And they're going to get it back at the beginning of the month because the prebate is only dependent on the size of your household. You have 2 in your household, you get $465. You have 4, mom and dad and 2 kids, you get $631. It's very simple and very fair.
Yeah, but the only households that get the prebate are legal residents.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
The illegal immigration thing is raging debate here in this country, and that's really not what we want to get into too badly here on FairTax Power Radio. But if you are an illegal, if you can't supply a valid Social Security number, you don't get the prebate.
Yep. And I contend that feature is going to help the problem of illegal immigration because it's going to encourage people to come here legally. It's not like we don't want people to come into the country, but do it like my parents and grandparents did. Do it legally, Do your paperwork first, and then check in at Ellis Island like my parents and grandparents did.
Yeah, that's the problem with this debate. Some people say, I don't want people coming into this country illegally, and some people say, you translate that into you hate all immigrants.
Yeah.
Not really not going to go there anymore, but that's what. But the fair tax does make sure that only legal households get the prebate.
Yeah, that's right. So... All right, what else is on here?
All right, well, we're pretty close on time again here. How about greatly reduces or eliminates compliance costs?
Oh, and that's a big deal, not only for companies. Yeah, compliance costs are what it costs a company to keep up with the tax code. Even if you're a small company like my wife and I was a 2-person company, and we still had to pay our accountant. Even though we did the daily bookkeeping, at the end of the year, I had to give him a copy of the file, and then he went through it and found my mistakes and stuff like that, corrected it, and generated the K-1 and all that stuff. So even with a small 2-person company, it still costs us between $500 and $1,000 a year to keep up with it. Now imagine if you're GE.
They spend billions upon billions to produce a return that's, reams of paper thick that has a zero on the bottom line. So you spend a lot of money so you don't have to pay. The compliance cost in that case infinitely outweighed the tax liability.
Yeah. So the compliance cost is greatly reduced for companies. And go back to the beginning of 2017, January 20th, when Donald Trump took the oath of office, and one of the first things he did was demand of the federal government, the bureaucracies, to start cutting back on the unnecessary regulations, and he required them to get rid of 2 unnecessary regulations for every new one they proposed. And just that alone, reducing the amount of regulation, the regulatory compliance costs, that got the economy going. Okay. That helps make the case for the fair tax, because the fair tax will do the same thing.
I got one more hot button of yours to push before we run out of time.
Okay.
I can do it in 3 words, and the fair tax eliminates this. Ready? Civil asset forfeiture.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
Take your blood pressure pill there, Ronnie.
It's so bad. Folks, I'll remind you again, I've said that, go onto YouTube and look for a short, it's about 2-minute video for Carol Hinders. Carol Hinders. She's a grandmotherly type person, I think in Idaho. I can't remember what state. She ran a small restaurant. It was a cash-only restaurant. Granted, there aren't that many, but, cash only. And she had been dealing with this one bank for about 30 years. Suddenly, she gets a call from the IRS. We've frozen your bank account, because we got a report from one of the tellers, you're depositing all this money, and we think you're structuring. If you deposit or move $10,000 or more, it must be reported to the IRS. If you're a crook and you're trying to move some money and you're doing it in increments of less than $10,000, that's called structuring. So this whole thing was put in place by Congress so IRS could keep up with criminals. Okay, unfortunately, they turn around and turn it at perfectly innocent small business people. And read that thing or listen to that video about Carol Hinders and see what she had to go through. But that is the civil asset forfeiture. It's a runaway thing.
Yeah, and the fair tax gets rid of that because it gets rid of the IRS that comes in and does that to people.
Yeah. And the IRS, we also gave a report in which the IRS purposely have been targeting what they know to be perfectly innocent small business people, because it was easier to go after them than to do the work or go after the actual criminals. It's just, there goes my blood pressure.
Oh, well, okay. We can back off on your blood pressure here a little bit and give everyone our email address again, thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. thefairtaxguys@gmail.com. Our Facebook page, like us, leave us a comment. We appreciate that. And look for our next Facebook Live, and I'll give you set up another one here for you. Another word, webinar.
Oh, yeah, the webinar. That's the fourth Thursday of each month, and it is free. You have to go to fairtax.org/webinar to register for it. We have a fellow in Orlando and one in Colorado that run the webinar. My wife and I had to do the one in March because these guys were on vacation with their families. But that's fine. They'll be running the one in April, so you'll have the experts back at it. And
I would pick Jade Wally's brain if I could.
Oh, yeah.
He's on there. This is our CPA friend out in Colorado that's on the webinar now. We've recruited him to do that. And you talk about one smart and sharp cookie, that's it.
So if somebody wants to make the case, the CPAs won't like the fair tax, so we'll put them out of business. No, you need to get on that webinar and send that question into Jade Wally and see what he says, because he is a CPA and he really understands the fair tax. So that's a fictitious talking point.
So again, we would encourage people to join Americans for Fair Taxation. That is the national grassroots level. You can join at any level you'd like. I mean, your membership dues are up to you.
Yeah.
Obviously, we'd like you to join at a higher level, at the highest level you can. But still, we need to have as many numbers as we can. We need to have grow that organization, the Americans for Fair Taxation, so that when our people go up to Congress and say, look, we want the fair tax, and they say, well, how many votes is that going to get me? We can give them a nice big fat number.
Yeah, and join us on our own Facebook-like site, member.fairtax.org. It is a social media site just for fair tax supporters. Just for fair tax supporters. Member.fairtax.org. Please join us there.
Okay, and that's going to wrap it up for this edition of Fair Tax Power Radio. Time flies when you're having fun.
Yeah.
I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Ron Malero.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you again that the fair tax is America's big solution, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
Fair tax is coming, don't stand in the way. Fair tax is coming across the